Dr. Fauci is in trouble, or at least he should be. We've got some incredible coverage and some amazing guests to break it all down for us today. Dr. Robert Malone and the great John Leake. And oh boy, comments from some of the senators involved. You're not going to want to miss this. Also, Spain being invaded by refugees, women. No, just kidding. Spain being invaded by tens of thousands of Allahu Akbar shouting military-aged men. What could possibly go wrong? We've got the story on why and how that is happening. Also, some really, really significant news happening in California. The vote fraud in New York is out of control. And the AI apocalypse, is it upon us? We have a very special guest, a pastor and professor who just wrote a book about the AI apocalypse, joining us to discuss all of that and much more. We also have the great Andrew Muller, who's going to join us to break down the news. But before we get to any of that, we've got a word from the Word. This comes out of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 8. The Bible reads, "Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away." Folks, a good reminder about the importance of love, the nature of love. We love because he first loved us. And one of the signs that we are believers, according to the Bible, according to 1 John, is that we love one another. So that's an obligation, folks. We love our brother. We even love those who persecute us, which is like why people think Christians are so weird and crazy. But the more we can do that, the better witnesses and ambassadors we will be. Before we get to the news segment, folks, I want to tell you about our good friends over at 4RBs. Now, you don't have to be a beekeeper to understand that something is really wrong when it comes to bees. But here's what most people do not know yet. There's a new published peer-reviewed study showing stronger, healthier hives using something called a pure wave cell. I actually have mine right over here, and I love it. At the same time, now we've got beekeepers reporting losses of over 70% of their colonies. The research is coming in. And the fact is, even if you don't care about bees, even if you don't like honey, bees are absolutely essential, folks. Our food supply literally depends on the pollination that bees provide. So this is really important. They're also the canary in the coal mine, right? When the bees are struggling, we know it's a sign that something deeper, something bigger is going wrong. And so here's where it gets interesting, right? This research shows that when you restore stability to the environment, the bees begin to regain their strength and their balance naturally. Obviously, bees are incredibly sensitive. They're even more sensitive than we are. So what's affecting them is going to affect us too. In fact, it is affecting us too, but the bees just show the signs first. So if something is helping them at that level, you have to ask, what else could it be helping? So that's where 4RBs comes in. In fact, that's what it's built around. It's a mission-based company, and they're working directly with beekeepers, not just across the United States, but around the world, while making this technology available for people to use in their own homes, for their pets, for their gardens, even for themselves. And what's really great about this company, every purchase that you make, whether it be honey that's amazing or these pure wave cells, goes right back into the mission, goes right into placing more pure wave cells into beehives and literally saving the bees. So it becomes less about, do I need this, and more about what do I want to be part of. So if you want to check it out, go to 4rbs.com. That's the number 4R, like Romeo, bees, BEES.com. And when you use that promo code HIVE20, that's HIVE20, HIVE, then the number 20, you're going to get 20% off whatever you buy. So decide for yourself what makes sense, folks, but go check it out, 4rbs.com, 4rbs.com. We are just so thankful for what they're doing, not just for the bees, but for the people too. Joining us now is the great Andrew Muller, Chief of Operations at Liberty Sentinel Media. Andrew, welcome to the Sentinel Report. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, brother. Good to be with you.
It's great to have you. And I mean, Fauci, like everybody's talking about Fauci except the fake media, and we should be. But one of the things that's really interesting, we got Fauci's private COVID-19 diaries. It is absolutely astounding. I mean, the guy was more obsessed with himself than just about anybody I have ever seen. Clearly a narcissist. He's scribbling in this thing going back to 2020, portraying himself as like some kind of superhero. He just can't get over what a celebrity he is. It's absolutely shocking. And now he just got hauled before Congress to answer some serious questions. I want to show, obviously, you guys know he just basically answered Fifth Amendment to everything, right? don't want to incriminate myself. It's very ironic that he's relying on the Constitution to protect him after trampling the Constitution and taking away all our freedoms. But here is House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer slamming Anthony Fauci.
Fauci just perjure himself like that and just walk home.
Well, we're going to do everything we can to hold him accountable. The key was doing all the research, getting the emails, working with the whistleblowers, getting the facts straight, and then giving Dr. Fauci an opportunity in a public setting under oath to give his version of the story. And Jesse, it looks like he lied several times, especially when he tried to twist the definition of what gain-of-function research is.
Insane. Now, Senator Paul actually had to order Fauci's attorney removed. Check this out.
This testimony is from Anthony Fauci. This is not a game with his lawyers. He can advise. His lawyers can give him advice. He's got a half dozen here. They're all allowed to talk to him. Yes. All right? Yeah. But the attorneys are not recognized. In fact, the attorney was told not to sit at the table, and he's not obeying that recommendation. There's a row behind you, sir. That's where you were told to sit, and you're not. And now you're disrupting the proceedings. And so, look, this is the way Anthony Fauci wants to be remembered. For a lawyer not listening to the rules. That's the way you want to be remembered, and that's what you're going to do. You are not recognized, sir. Security, please remove him from the room.
Whoops. And here is Senator Thune. You can say a lot about Senator Thune, but you got this right.
It takes 60 votes to break a filibuster on a contempt of Congress resolution. Are you for contempt of Congress for Anthony Fauci? And based on that,
I think it's first off, it'll be a question for Senator Paul as the chairman of the HISGAC committee and the members of that committee. But certainly his answers today were completely inadequate. And I think that's certainly an option. I think that's an option that ought to be available to us. What he did today in front of that committee was inexcusable.
Yeah, inexcusable is right. I don't want to go to number 7 in a minute, because the real question now is, what are we going to do about this, right? Yeah, we had a nice public spectacle. Yeah, we got a little bit of schadenfreude watching Fauci squirm in his chair, but nobody's in jail yet. Fauci is just the face of this deep state bureaucratic monster that did this to us. Andrew, you were at the Young Americans for Liberty conference. You had the opportunity to ask Senator Rand Paul about this at the recent Young Americans for Liberty Summit just last week. What did he tell you?
Well, so I was able to talk to him. He briefed the whole conference on the Fauci hearings, and I said, Senator Paul, what's going to happen? Obviously, he pled the fifth. What are we looking at next? And he said, next week, this week now, we are going to hold him in contempt of Congress. He assured me that they were going to make a vote on that. My concern is if you hold Dr. Fauci in contempt of Congress, he's going to get prosecuted by DC elitist courts that are notorious for protecting their own and protecting the deep state. So there's a good chance if Congress holds him in contempt, he will just be adjudicated by these courts who have defended him. I think the better option, Alex, is to call him before Congress, have him embarrass himself, which they already did, and then have the states prosecute him.
Yeah, and I know our Attorney General here in Florida is actually investigating Attorney General James Utmeyer. So that's really exciting. I hope we'll see some action on that. I don't know if the auto pen pardon counts, but I do want to remind everybody, too, there is no statute of limitations on terrorism, bioterrorism. There is no statute of limitations on mass murder. In fact, we spoke multiple times with the guy who wrote the Convention on Biological Weapons, professor of international law at the University of Illinois. And he told us repeatedly that this was a flagrant violation of this treaty and the statute that he wrote that was passed unanimously by the House and the Senate. So I think we really need justice. I don't think public embarrassment is enough. And you're right, holding him in contempt. I mean, they held Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt for all the crazy crimes he was doing. Nothing ever happened to him. So it's just disgraceful that we don't see more on this. Yeah, a little bit of catharsis. But stay tuned later in the program, folks. We've got some very special guests to break down more on this critical issue with Anthony Fauci, the deep state, and the bio-warfare pandemic that was COVID-19. I want to go to the American Psychological Association conference. They were just exposed by accuracy in media, plotting to use mental health and therapy to promote left-wing extremism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, racial propaganda, and much more. And by the way, this is the largest gathering of psychologists in the world, folks. Listen to this.
The main focus is to help white individuals become better allies. And these anti-DEI policies have also set the stage for increased censorship and punitive action taken against those who dare to speak up. And this is especially the case for those of us who decide to speak out against the racism toward Palestinians and genocide in Gaza. We've even seen the language of anti-Semitism, the language of our anti-racism movement taken and weaponized to reify and maintain racism, colonialism, and widespread oppression nationally.
There you go, folks. Fire your psychologist if you have one. What a disgrace. Of course, there are some decent ones, but man, it's just out of control. All of these associations, like the Pediatrician Association, the psychiatrists, I mean, they're just all completely out of control. Before we get to what's going on in Spain, Andrew, as we mentioned, you were at the Young Americans for Liberty conference, and Vivek Ramaswamy, I, of course, interviewed Vivek Ramaswamy before. I wasn't very pleased with the answers he provided to me, and he certainly didn't like the question I asked him about our nation being founded on biblical principles. But at the Young Americans for Liberty conference, he was booed off stage almost. I want to roll that clip, and then we'll come back and you can give us some insight.
Please welcome to the stage, Vivek Ramaswamy.
What was with that, Andrew? I mean, why were these Young Americans for Liberty, young conservatives, libertarians, why were they so down on Vivek Ramaswamy? I mean, that's his stomping ground, huh?
Yeah, so this was in Cincinnati, about 500 to 700 of the most active students on college campuses and high schools. And they don't like him because of his Christmas crash out in 2024, where he took to X and he wrote about a 10-page missive on how young people can't afford a house, can't achieve the American dream because they're simply too lazy. And it's not foreigners, it's not the government, it's you. That was his message. And he's never backed down from that. And young people look at the Federal Reserve, they look at the mass migration crisis, they look at the inflation of our currency, and they see that their government has failed them. And Vivek Ramaswamy will not acknowledge that. He won't acknowledge that mass migration is a problem. He won't acknowledge that the Federal Reserve is a problem. He instead says just work harder and something about meritocracy. And that's the answer, and to vote for him, of course. So he was booed off stage for that. And he was heckled the whole time, supposed to give a 30-minute speech, only made it 12 minutes through because he couldn't address those issues. And it's representative of the whole cancer in the Republican Party right now, which is don't focus on mass migration or do anything about it, just sound bites. Don't focus on the core issues like the Federal Reserve, the inflation of our currency. Don't focus on the deep state. Just talk about working harder, entrepreneurship, and meritocracy, and say it's not these other people, it's not foreigners, it's not mass migration, it's certainly not your government who caused you these problems. So vote for us and work harder and make more tax money and everything will work out fine. That message didn't resonate. He said, we want winners, not whiners. He said it to the wrong crowd, and they literally booed him off stage.
Vote harder, vote harder, vote harder, vote harder, and keep expecting different results. And I think Albert Einstein had something to say about that. But anyways, let's go to Spain. This is disastrous, folks. I have spent a lot of time in Spain and in North Africa, and this is very troubling to me. We literally have the nation of Spain being invaded by tens of thousands of Muslim men. If you're watching this, you can see the video. I mean, just absolutely shocking. Looks like the government is allowing it to happen. Now, the Prime Minister of Spain, a socialist by the name of Pedro Sanchez, is pretending to be concerned. Trafficking gangs allowed the 60,000 migrants to cross into this little Spanish enclave called Ceuta on the tip of North Africa in Morocco. About 57 people dead so far, according to local media. And the immediate triggering event was a ruling by the Spanish Supreme Court saying that migrants could not just be turned around back to their countries. They had to be given some sort of legal process. Absolutely stunning. According to the president of this Spanish enclave, Juan Jesus Vivas, these arrivals amounted to 70% of the population of that city. City of 83,000, you've got over 50,000 people coming across. Now, supposedly some have been sent back, but my goodness, this is crazy. You also have the invaders breaking into stores, stealing stuff, grabbing women, police just standing back, completely overwhelmed. Let's roll that clip. Yikes. I mean, you see these horrible scenes. If you're just listening to us on the radio or on a podcast, I mean, you've got people running into these buildings. You've got police just kind of standing around doing nothing. Horrible, horrible scenes that we are seeing here. And you've got Bishop Athanasius Schneider, the auxiliary bishop of Astana in Kazakhstan, explaining what is going on here.
Now we're witnessing an invasion. They are not refugees. No, this is an invasion of mass Islamization of Europe. And so this is a global.
Yeah, it's global, and it is an invasion. It is the Islamization of the West. The U.S. government, through the State Department, put out a statement saying that the United States stands with the people of Spain and all Europeans against this egregious violation of sovereignty and human rights. This unacceptable incident is a direct result of the Spanish government's deliberate efforts to enable and facilitate mass illegal immigration into Europe. We are considering actions to defend Americans at home and abroad from this threat, and we stand ready to assist other European allies considering similar options. Folks, multiple European governments have now said they are closing their borders to Spain because they don't want this mess in their countries, and who can blame them? Now, turning back to Florida, we've got Florida Attorney General James Utmeyer sending a letter to the Florida Conference of Catholic Bishops, blasting them for not honoring religious objections to the vaccine mandates. Florida law makes clear that all schools must honor religious exemptions to vaccine programs. It says these vaccine requirements shall not apply if the parent of the child objects in writing because it conflicts with his or her religion. So thank you, Attorney General Utmeyer. We appreciate it. Now, over in New York City, we've got the massive bombshell about Mamdani's election. Turns out there were more fraudulent votes cast in that election than the actual margin of Mamdani's victory. That's according to a very prestigious elections auditor who we've had on the program before, Marley Hornick. She's the founder of Real America Vote and New York Citizens Audit, and she is arguing that this very well could have been a fraudulent election. Now, she doesn't know that for sure, but the margin of victory is smaller than the number of fraudulent votes that we now know existed. We have Iran attacking 9 U.S. military bases and outposts all across the Middle East since the 9th of July. That's according to a U.S. official who spoke anonymously to The Intercept. Very, very significant damage in these attacks, according to the source. And very troubling here. We've got the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps warning residents of countries where American forces are being hosted to keep at least 1,650 feet away from any building that might house U.S. personnel, including hotels. And they're warning that more attacks will be coming, including on secret targets like CIA safe houses and things like that. Meanwhile, very troubling news. We've got Turkey's Interior Minister, Mustafa Siftifsi, saying he's going to liberate Jerusalem from the Jews and return it to Turkish hands. Just as in the past, he said, those lands will be ours once again. God willing, they will come under our sovereignty and dominion once more. He says we have a global leader. He's talking about the Turkish dictator, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, at the helm, a world leader. Of course, the Israelis were not amused. The Israeli Foreign Ministry posting on X that the minister needs to wake up and smell the coffee. The corrupt Ottoman Empire is gone forever, and Jerusalem, they said, shall remain the eternal capital of Israel forever. Wow. We also have the trial of a mother who killed all 3 of her children in Massachusetts. A horrific story, folks. These children were 5, 3, and 8 months old. The name is Lindsay Clancy. And when I read this story, my first thought was, oh my goodness, I bet she was on psychiatric so-called medicine. Clicked on it. And of course, here's what I read. Here's word for word. Antidepressants were prescribed after the birth of her 3rd child. These worsened her condition. On the day of the killings, Lindsay Clancy said she heard voices telling her, this is your last chance. Kill the children so you can kill yourself. Folks, these drugs are bad, bad news. They are more dangerous than you can imagine. You need to be very, very careful. We've had many experts on here, including the great Dr. Peter Breggin, Harvard-trained psychiatrist, warning that these things are poison. You don't want them. Planned Parenthood, folks, we voted harder. We got Republicans in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, and Planned Parenthood is now back on the dole, raking in almost $1 billion in federal tax money every single year. The largest mass murderer of babies in this country is now back on the federal dole. Now, we know that the drying up of funding was very helpful to them. In fact, according to their own report, about 30 of their mass murder centers were closed. Their Medicaid traffic fell by 25% in the 12 months in which they did not have federal money. Now, think about it, folks. We're talking here about babies whose lives were not snuffed out as a result of this. Now the funding is being restored because your Republicans in the House and your Republicans in the Senate allowed it to happen. All they had to do was renew it. We've got a Republican majority in both houses. We've got a Republican president. They chose not to. So there are a lot of efforts now to pressure Congress into fixing this. But truly, truly sad. Last but not least, we've got the state of California. They want to make sure that babies continue to die. So they are now going after a Christian nonprofit organization called Heartbeat International and another small pro-life Christian nonprofit called Real Options. And the crime of these nonprofit organizations is telling women that they could reverse the abortion after they took the abortion pill. How dare they inform women that there are options once they decide they don't actually want to kill their babies? The prosecutors are calling this consumer fraud. It is absolutely insane. According to Michael McConnell, professor who teaches free speech law at Stanford, the novel use of California's commercial fraud statute seems designed to intimidate nonprofit organizations that, with no hope of commercial gain, seek to educate the public about services that are lawful but contrary to the ideological preferences of the government. Same thing is happening in New York. New York Attorney General Letitia James has a similar lawsuit against Heartbeat International and other pro-life pregnancy centers. And folks, this is crazy. They don't have a single woman who has complained about harm from these organizations, but they don't care. They want to make sure that babies continue to be slaughtered. And I think that just shows you that we're dealing here with the demonic, right? We're dealing here with absolute evil. It's insane. Now, the Communist Chinese Party apparently has been wining and dining American journalists. It's rather disgusting. According to Natalie Winters, she's part of Bannon's War Room, these CCP-linked journalists, some of them actually on China's payroll, some of them going to China on trips funded by the Chinese Communist Party, getting kickbacks, apparently. It's all happening through a group called the China United States Exchange Foundation. It's a front for the CCP. They have current and former journalists from the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, NPR, The Associated Press, Vox, The Atlantic, The LA Times, The Chicago Tribune. I want to give you some of the names that Miss Natalie listed. Ezra Klein, New York Times columnist. We've got Matthew Iglesias, the co-founder of Vox. Ronald Brownstein, senior political analyst at CNN. Bradford Plumer, New York Times reporter. Marjorie Miller, former vice president of The Associated Press. Steve Clements, former editor-at-large of The Hill. Folks, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. It is absolutely astounding. Andrew, what do you make of this? I mean, why are the Communist Chinese trying to influence our journalists?
Well, if you can control the funnels of information there, you can control the education and worldview of Americans by what they read and consume. So, we know that this is a real tactic. Our own government has used it against us. The CIA had Operation Mockingbird, where they worked with various journalists and to push their narrative. There's no evidence that that program ever ceased to exist, so it probably still happens now. It makes sense that they would try to do that, one of our chief foreign adversaries, to touch the hearts and minds of the American people to make them think a certain way about given issues, whether that be about AI data centers, fentanyl crisis, mass migration, what have you. If they can control the flow of information, they can control how people vote, if they're apathetic towards an issue, what they view as a high priority, etc.
Amazing. All right, folks, we've got a lot more coming up for you, so stay tuned here on the Sentinel Report. We're going to go to break, and we'll be back with some very special guests. Before we do go, though, folks, if you have children or grandchildren or children in your life that you care about, you want to make sure they're getting a good, real education, go check out our friends at classicalconversations.com. That's classicalconversations.com/LSM for Liberty Sentinel Media. And folks, that's where I have my own children enrolled. It is just a wonderful, wonderful program if you want your kids to be trained classically with a biblical model where the purpose of education is to know God and make him known. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on the Sentinel Report with much more.
If you've been following Alex Newman's reporting on the Great Taking, you already know the laws governing your IRA and your 401k were quietly changed. What you may not know is what to do about it, specifically for your accounts. My name is Andrew Winnett. I'm a certified financial fiduciary and the founder of Retirement Renegade. I spent $1 million producing The Retirement Reset, the documentary Alex Newman appears in alongside Tucker Carlson, Ben Stein, Lauren Seidel-Baker from ITR Economics, and more. Right now, I'm offering Liberty Sentinel listeners 2 things completely free. First, stream The Retirement Reset. Go to retirementrenegade.com/liberty and use promo code LIBERTY at checkout. Watch the full film and see the evidence yourself. Second, once you have watched it, book a free 15-minute retirement income clarity session. I will show you specifically how your accounts are structured, where the vulnerabilities are, and what a protected retirement plan looks like for your situation. Free, no obligation. Go to retirementrenegade.com/liberty. That is retirementrenegade.com/liberty. Promo code LIBERTY. Do it today.
As promised, folks, we're back with more on the Fauci, whatever you call that thing, Fifth Amendment fest. And to discuss all of this and break it down for us is the great Dr. Robert Malone. He, of course, was a member of the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. He is responsible for a lot of the intellectual property that created these mRNA vaccines. He's been on the cutting edge of this research, and he knows a lot of these people. He worked with a lot of these people for years and years in intelligence and biodefense. He's got a whole bunch of books that we've talked about before. Dr. Malone, welcome to the Sentinel Report. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Alex.
It's a pleasure to have you. Dr. Malone, you saw the same thing we all did with Dr. Fauci pleading the Fifth, and so many questions in my mind. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this guy was the face of something bigger. You know a lot more about this something bigger than your average American. Let's just start with the hearings. What was your takeaway from all the Fifth Amendment commentary and the comments from the lawmakers?
So I had the pleasure of speaking to the senior aide in the senators' group about this, and also had analyzed it in 2 Substacks prior to the meeting. What I did not expect Fauci to take the Fifth. I expected Fauci to play the I don't remember card like he did in his last hearing on sworn testimony. What took place was now in the context of the threat of state litigation against Dr. Fauci. In particular, now you have Louisiana joining Alabama and Florida in doing investigations into the feasibility of bringing claims against Dr. Fauci. And so in the face of that, clearly Fauci, with a very large contingent of lawyers, came to the conclusion that the reputational risks associated with pleading the Fifth outweighed the potential liability risks facing state investigations and potential litigation or claims against him, whether they're civil or they're criminal. And so the outcome was something that was incredibly embarrassing to him and allowed the Republicans really free range to read a number of different statements from his diaries, statements about the activities that occurred back then. And what was fascinating was that on the Democrat side, you had the representative committee members, senators, essentially asserting that they had not even read those diaries, were not up on the case, considered those diaries to be propaganda. And so we ended up with a usual media circus, but this one did not go so well for Dr. Fauci. Yeah. And what we're now having, you know, the phrase that comes to mind is the worm is turning. I was just on another news broadcast in which we had a representative from the, let's say, the public health establishment, an academic, defending his position and defending his role in the press, while the anchor was pushing him on the role of the press in not being transparent, not allowing questioning, not allowing second opinions, and these documents coming out, these releases that Rand Paul and his staff have made, has really changed the narrative now, except in those areas where it's not allowed still to question it. And that's an amazing change of turn of events, in my opinion. Now, the question of what is likely to transpire in the future. So I heard directly from the senator's senior aide that the plan was to go ahead, and this has now been reported in the news widely, go ahead and hold a committee vote to hold the doctor under contempt of Congress. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, clearly, Fauci showed contempt for Congress, including for the chair of the committee in his opening statements, in which he asserted that Senator Paul was on a vendetta or obsessed with him. By the way, that opening statement creates some additional legal liability for him, because the position has been taken by many that if you hold a presidential pardon and accept it, which is an admission of guilt, and then you go on to testify on the Hill and you provide an opening statement, you're required to continue to answer questions. That's one position. Basically, all this is about to get litigated. And I don't think it's going to go very well for Dr. Fauci, but time will tell.
Yeah. Actually, Andrew Mueller, Chief of Operations here at Liberty Sentinel Media, spoke with Rand Paul last week, and he did say, yeah, we're going to hold him in contempt. But we saw that last time Republicans had power. They held Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt, and unfortunately, not much happened. Dr. Malone, in terms of accountability, in terms of justice, and I do want to spend a little time on RFK's,
which are two different things.
Yeah, absolutely. But and I do want to spend a little bit of time on the very interesting exchange between RFK and Dana Bash on CNN. But where do you think we should be going with Fauci? Are there other people who maybe need to be looked at by state authorities or even federal authorities, maybe people who didn't get pardoned by an auto pen? How wide should a net be cast here to bring some of these people to justice and to have some accountability for the absolute disregard for our constitutional rights and, potentially other serious criminal charges?
So I'm advocating, number one, that Dr. Fauci's pension be pulled, and that would probably take a congressional act, but I think it would be entirely appropriate. These people that have engaged in these activities that have caused so much damage to so many of us absolutely need to be held accountable. But in my opinion, deeper than that, we need to analyze what were the systemic failures that enabled them. And among those includes people like Dr. Fauci, senior bureaucrat leaders within the government, amassing incredible power through long terms of tenure. I believe that we need to have an act that will make it so that there is functionally term limits on these senior bureaucrats of high status. And we're not hardly even scratching the surface of what's happened with Tony Fauci. In terms of the others that have been supporting actors, one of his right-hand people is now under indictment, as I recall, but there's a number of others, including academics in, let's say gently, the University of North Carolina, that need to be held accountable and need to be investigated. And they've been very resistant to that. Data disclosures have not been forthcoming. We have people within the government that need to be held accountable. But I think beyond all this, bad actors can be replaced, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen all over again. And all the systems are still there. All the same processes that gave rise to this have not been altered. And unless those things are changed, unless the underlying fundamentals are changed, we're going to see this play out again and again and again. And it seems to be typically a 5 to 10 year cycle. So this is not in any way over. And holding various individuals to account is absolutely necessary. But beyond that, we have got to have major systemic reform so that this kind of situation doesn't develop in the future. The decisions about public health need to be made by elected officials, not by scientist bureaucrats.
Yeah, absolutely. And with regard for our Constitution and our rights protected under the Constitution. Dr. Malone, you served on the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, you were the co-chair of that. A federal judge appointed by Democrats just kind of undid all the work that you guys did. But RFK was just on CNN, had a very fiery exchange with Dana Bash, the one of the resident propagandists over there. I want to roll that clip real quick and then come back and get your response to that.
So you are actually looking at, you're starting new studies to try to link autism, but you're also telling me—
I'm not trying to link autism to anything. I'm trying to find out, why is autism gone?
Are you also trying to find out how it interacts with people's DNA, what's predisposed to have an autistic child? Are you doing both?
Yeah, but Dana, you probably don't understand this because you're not a scientist, but genes
you're not
don't
either.
Genes don't cause epidemics.
I understand. Genes,
They can provide a vulnerability.
A gene provides
environmental exposure.
That's what I'm asking. Are you studying the environmental
We're looking
exposure?
at all the different environmental exposures, but your statement, you have been fooled. Your statement that this has been studied is not true. It's categorically not true. Not for any of this study.
It is.
Wow. Very interesting exchange. We had RFK on this program before he joined as leader of HHS, and he was pretty hardcore then. He talked about the CIA and the role in creating pandemics. What do you make of this exchange? I mean, you worked on this very issue for the federal government. Do you think RFK is doing the right thing here? Is he going hard enough? Is he going too hard?
So the backstory here was covered in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago, and actually I just got a call from that reporter today asking for follow-up questions. What has been revealed is the president has basically bypassed the West Wing. Secretary Kennedy was shut down by Overton and Susie Wiles to a significant extent and told to basically shut up about anything controversial regarding vaccines until after the midterms, consequent to the Fabrizio Award poll that was selectively released. What happened a couple of weeks ago was the president intervened and directly demanded that it made statements that the secretary would be a failure if he didn't address this question, particularly of autism and vaccines. And so he's challenged the secretary. My understanding is the president has really deep, abiding, warm feelings for the secretary, and that the secretary does in fact want to stay with this administration. But the president is pushing Bobby to get out of his corner, get out of his crouch, and start addressing these issues and taking them on. And Dana Bash appears to have been the fall guy or gal for the secretary, coming off the ropes and deciding to start punching. And punch he did. And clearly, as you can see, this is only one of many clips that demonstrate that Dana Bash has no clue what she's talking about. And she's just reciting talking points that are stale, no longer effective. And she's taking on whatever you think about the secretary. He is a seasoned trial lawyer. I would not want to go against him in this kind of a debate. And so they went head to head. And I can tell you that what's happening is that social media is blowing up. Maha feels like their champion is back. The autism moms, the mama bears, the Maha moms are cheering. This was a major new front. And what it reflects is that Secretary Kennedy has been allowed to go ahead and start advancing the agenda. What he has said repeatedly over time is that the president would allow him to, I think the word he's used is go crazy on vaccines after the election. And apparently the president, and we could talk about why the president might suddenly decide that he wants to re-energize the Maha base. I think for likes of you, that's fairly self-evident. But be that as it may, that's what's happened. And the secretary has come out punching. And for many of us, it was a glorious thing to see.
Yeah, it was hilarious. I was just waiting for the brought to you by Pfizer on CNN and all the rest of them. We're almost out of time here, Dr. Malone. You do a lot of good work. You've got a Substack that's got excellent information. Tell the people how to find you, how to get copies of your book. I know you got a new book. We talked to you about that recently for another program on homesteading, which was delightful for me since that's what I'm working on now. I just bought myself a tractor today. But tell the folks how to follow your work and how to get some of these books.
Malone.news is our Substack. You don't have to pay to subscribe, but if you do, thank you very much. X and Truth Social at RW Malone MD. Easiest way to get the books, I'm sorry to say it, is Amazon. There's 2 more in the wings. And right now, I'm just barely back from an 8-day trip to Israel and providing a lot of in-depth coverage about the situation in Gaza, on the West Bank, the Israel as a frontier akin to the American southwestern frontier historically, and really diving into what the truth is about Israel right now, as opposed to the propaganda that is being so effectively pushed, using, let's say, Middle Eastern money. And we'll leave it at that.
I'm looking forward to your reports. Thank you very much for joining us today, Dr. Malone. Thanks for staying on top of all these issues. It looks like a lot of what you said over the years is being vindicated as we speak. So we're grateful for you making some time for us, and I hope we can talk to you again very soon.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much. All right, folks, stay with us. We're going to be right back with much more here on the Sentinel Report. Hey guys, Alex Newman here. I want to tell you about a wonderful ministry that is doing incredibly important work. That's Public School Exit. I am very blessed to serve as the volunteer executive director. We've got an incredible team, and our mission is simple. Try to get as many children into the safe sanctuary of Christian education as humanly possible, as quickly as possible. Government schools are no place for children. Children need to learn about God. They need to learn the Word of God. They need real education. They need to learn how to read, write, and do math. And we all know that's not what's happening in the government schools. In fact, what's happening is they're turning our children into revolutionaries, little radicals ready to burn down our churches and our civilization, not to mention our families. So go check it out today, publicschoolexit.com. We've got all kinds of resources for parents, for pastors, for taxpayers, for everybody down the line. And folks, this is one of the most critical battles. So go check out our partners at publicschoolexit.com, publicschoolexit.com. Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Ladies and gentlemen, we spent a long time on Fauci in the news segment, and you saw, I think, some of the highlights of that disgraceful hearing. But we didn't want to just leave it at that. Joining us now to discuss that disgraceful performance, as some of our U.S. senators refer to it, is the great John Leake. He is a nonfiction author. He's had a lifelong interest in medical history, forensic medicine. He has worked very closely with Dr. Peter McCullough, who's also been a guest on this program. In fact, he was the primary author of their best-selling books, The Courage to Face COVID-19 and New York Times bestseller, Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. He's got a more recent book now, Mind Viruses, America's Irrational Obsession. And he has so much insight into all these issues. He writes a daily investigative report for Focal Point Substack, and he's the vice president of the McCullough Foundation. John, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Alex. Happy to see you.
It's great to have you again. Thank you for joining us. So what do you make of what we just saw happen in the Senate? I mean, a lot of people were hoping to see Fauci in handcuffs. I think there was some sense of schadenfreude watching him squirm like that. But, I mean, nobody has really been held accountable yet, have they?
No, it's not the right forum. I mean, an investigator, a Senate inquiry is a good starting point. I applaud Senator Paul for his valiant efforts since 2021. But this is really a matter for the Department of Justice. And the thing that I'm really trying to emphasize, and my colleague Dr. McCullough and I have been looking at this for over 5 years, the documentary evidence that Anthony Fauci deliberately concealed the starting all the way back to 2014, which is when the period of his preemptive pardon begins. January 2014 is an important date because it was on that day that this infamous bat coronavirus gain of function proposal was submitted and reviewed by the NIH. The principal players here are Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, Peter Daszak at EcoHealth Alliance, and then their colleague at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, Shengji Li, the so-called Bat Lady. They submitted their application to do this research, and it was reviewed in January 2014. That's when the pardon period for Fauci's preemptive pardon begins. Now, the documentary evidence that they were doing gain of function, even after the administrative pause on gain of function that was imposed in October of 2014, that paper trail is enormous. It's so big, the grant proposals, the academic papers, Barrick et al. Are themselves stating in their papers that we are amplifying, we're creating chimeric bat coronaviruses to make them infectious. And in fact, we've succeeded. I mean, they state in humanized mice, in vivo, we have made this chimeric virus infectious and transmissible. So there's a kind of distorted house of mirrors that's going on in these Senate hearings, because we know from the documents that Fauci deliberately, well, first of all, he funded it, his NIAID. He then concealed the origin of it. His NIAID started working with Moderna in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 2016. Now, I want to linger on this point, Alex. I know I'm kind of monologuing, but this is important. We don't have much time, so I want to jump into it. There was a paper published in 2022 by a virology journal called Frontiers in Virology. They took that very, very curious genetic sequence that codes for the so-called furin cleavage site. It's part of the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2 that makes it so transmissible amongst humans, so infectious and so transmissible. And like many virologists, they said this genetic sequence is so fascinating and so peculiar. Let's see if anybody has ever patented this genetic sequence. They do what's called a blast search. It's a genetic database for patents. And they get a perfect match with this exact same genetic sequence that was patented by Moderna in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 2016. And I keep telling people, no one has challenged the veracity of this paper. Maria Bartiromo asked Stefan Bancel, the CEO of Moderna, Stefan, how do we to explain this? And he said, I will have my scientists look into it and get back to you. But there was no follow-up on this. This is the smoking gun evidence that the lab creation of SARS-CoV-2 and the vaccine countermeasure were produced by the same complex of scientists, and Anthony Fauci knew about it. Now, I'll conclude with the kind of roster of crime. Anthony Fauci used his position of influence to suppress all early treatment modalities. So the evidentiary standard is met to prosecute him for mass negligent homicide. He promoted remdesivir in a hospital setting, even though the WHO issued a warning against doing that, more mass negligent homicide. And then he pushed out this messenger RNA vaccine even after the first data came in that it was neither effective nor safe. So the evidence of crime is there. This could be a slam dunk in a criminal proceeding, but we can talk about it if you want to. Todd Blanche isn't going to touch this thing, and I have my theory about why.
Yeah, I know our Attorney General here in Florida, Utmeyer, is supposedly investigating. I hope that will happen. We're down to just a couple minutes left. John, I am curious why you think Blanche won't touch it. And also, I think right now, even in the alternative media, Fauci is being portrayed as kind of the puppet master who led this whole thing. Are there people more important than Fauci to this story that maybe we're not talking about, that have not been dragged in front of a committee hearing in Congress yet?
Well, I mean, Ralph Barrick at UNC, I think he has been subjected to some kind of examination, but it never went anywhere. Look who's funding Ralph Barrick. It was the Department of Defense, it was DARPA, it was this whole biosecurity apparatus. It's the Department of Defense, the CIA, whatever goons are running the HHS behind the scene. It's every government agency. Fauci is just the face of this criminal syndicate. And what's happening with these Senate hearings, there's a great catharsis in seeing a powerful man pilloried in the public square. That's what we, the people, are being given. We're able to vent our outrage and our anger and frustration on Fauci as he's pilloried in the public forum. But this is not justice. And I'll tell you why Blanche won't touch this. This is a Mickey Mouse preemptive pardon. There's no legal precedent for this. It's just plainly ridiculous on the face of it. But he won't touch it because in an official legal discovery in federal court, it will be revealed that the whole rotten edifice of the U.S. government knew about this and did not intervene. The liabilities for the U.S. government to all of mankind would be so great that the whole sewer will just a sinkhole will just sink the whole thing.
Yep. Makes me think of Epstein. I think that's one of the reasons that nobody dares touch this, because the whole shebang will end up coming down. It's astounding. John, I wish we had more time. We're going to have to get you back for another segment. What's the best way for people to follow your work?
Go to thefocalpoints.com. All of this I've cited in recent posts on that, thefocalpoints.com. It's with my colleague Peter McCullough. It's a daily newsletter. And please go buy my new book, Mind Viruses. It goes into the psychology and the manipulation of these creepy operations that are being perpetrated on us. It's just out, and they can find it on Amazon.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. Thank you, John. We'll have to get you back to discuss all of that and much more. And yeah, we got to make sure that this never happens again. I mean, I hope we collectively as Americans, as human beings, learned not to fall for that foolishness again. John, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your insights, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, folks, stay with us. We'll be right back with more.
In the grand tapestry of nature, a delicate balance weaves life's intricate threads. Today, this balance is faltering more and more as bee populations face unprecedented challenges. Without a collective effort to rescue our bees and enhance biodiversity, we're headed for devastation on a global scale. But amidst the chaos, a solution has emerged. A rallying cry echoes, a call to protect these guardians of our food chain. Introducing 4R Bees, a technology-driven organization that is saving bees globally and organically every day. At 4R Bees, we understand the critical role that bees play in maintaining the balance of our ecosystem. Saving the bees is synonymous with saving our planet, and 4R Bees is at the forefront of this mission. Visit 4rbees.com to learn more about how you can save the bees and redefine the course of our future.
The AI apocalypse is upon us. Well, maybe not. We've had several guests on the program in recent months talking about this. We have a very special guest joining us today to talk about this. He is the author of a new book called Man-Made: St. Anthony's Guide to Surviving the AI Apocalypse. I'm referring, of course, to Chris Wiley, C.R. Wiley. He does a lot of things. He's a pastor. He's a college professor. He's a commercial real estate investor, a landlord. He's a building contractor, married for 4 decades. He's got lots of children and grandchildren. He's even on the board of a college that we appreciate very much, the New St. Andrews College. And his new book deals with something very important, and that is the dangers of AI. One of the things that we just saw recently, this new superhumanoid general purpose robot called Ceteris or something. It looks a lot like a demon to me. I couldn't help but thinking of Elon Musk saying we're summoning a demon with this AI. Chris, welcome to the Sentinel Report. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Alex. Really glad to be with you.
It's great to have you. Tell us about this new superhumanoid robot that has been released. I mean, it looks a lot like a demon to me. What do we make of this?
Well, the problem with a lot of these Silicon Valley guys is they're kind of freaky, and they get a sort of a kick out of creating freaky stuff. And this is just another example of it. Now, I can imagine some really positive uses for the tech, but there's really no reason they had to make it look as freaky as they made this. And like you said, maybe it's kind of getting at something a little darker and a little deeper.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I have been sounding an alarm about for years now, Chris, is that like it just seems that the people who dominate the AI space, they're not Christians, very, very much openly so. They like to go to things like Burning Man. We'll be there in a few weeks to document what's going on. They're very hostile to the Christian worldview, to biblical ethics. You write in your book about the coming AI apocalypse. Expand on that a little bit. What are we facing here as humans?
Well, for the last 30 years, we've been seeing the digitization of the economy, and that is just going to continue exponentially. It's pretty much going to be the case, and it even is right now, that you really have a hard time making a living without having some exposure to it or being tied into it. That will increasingly be the case, and artificial intelligence will be instrumental to that. But when it comes to the negative influences, spiritual influences, of course, are pretty significant. But there are also just some totalitarian possibilities that I think that we just need to be really prepared for. So Noah Yuval Harari, someone that I think it's Yuval Noah Harari. I can't remember the order, but he was with the World Economic Forum for a long time. But he's famous for having stated that humans are now hackable animals. And what he was getting at is the very subtle ways that digital technologies can be used to influence us and nudge us in directions that please other people and don't serve our own interests. And that's only going to get worse with artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah, I started sounding the alarm about the fourth industrial revolution when Klaus Schwab put his book out called The Fourth Industrial Revolution. And like some of those technologies, I was trying to tell people about it. They're like, oh, don't be silly. Like there's no such thing as smart dust. They're not going to hook up a microchip to your brain. They're like, yeah, here we are. Neuralink is here. Like all these things are here. But I want to dwell for a moment on something you said. Like obviously it's a technology, and there will of course be good uses for this technology. So before we get to more of the dark side, talk a little bit about some of the positives. Are there any redeeming qualities to this AI revolution? What are some things that we might want to use these technologies for without, of course, letting it do our thinking for us or write our sermons for us?
Yeah, there actually are a number of things. I have a lot of respect for the people behind the technology in terms of just the innovation and the risks they took to help bring it into being. But we already are experiencing some really positive benefits, but they have to do with things that human beings just could never do on their own. For an example, AlphaFold is something that helped us to identify the 200 million ways proteins can fold. So these are amino acids, and they're essential for life. But what that means is that we're going to be able to develop perhaps therapies and approaches to addressing disease that we've not had before. And so consequently, there may be people right out there today in our listening audience who are going to be really helped by that technology or that research that AlphaFold performed. I could go into a description of how it's just so kind of daunting for human beings to have tried to pull off the same thing. But I'll just put it this way. AlphaFold was able to identify these 200 million ways that proteins could fold in a year. It would have taken hundreds of years for human beings to do it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, the ability of AI to just take unfathomably large amounts of data and make sense of it for us is truly extraordinary. So here's the $50 million question. How do we survive the AI apocalypse? What does the AI apocalypse look like, and how do we survive it?
Well, basically, we live in a world where, as I noted, more and more of it is coming under the direct control of digital technology. So just think about your car. That if for some reason the government or maybe just your insurer or your bank decides that it doesn't like how you're driving, they can just shut off your car. It's just like, okay, is that really something that you want to be vulnerable to having happen to you? But just think about how that potentially could actually impact you directly physically if you were to somehow get linked physically to artificial intelligence and to really the digital realm. So there's a term, the Internet of Things, and initially people thought about that as digital technology being implanted in your refrigerator or your toaster, so that if there were problems with those appliances, the people who made them would know about them and be able to preemptively address those problems. But that kind of stuff could be directly applied to us, and I'm not making stuff up. I'm talking about stuff that these guys are speculating about and thinking about. So with like Neuralink, as you noted earlier, you have a direct physical connection to digital technology in your brain, and there's this hope promulgated by transhumanists like Ray Kurzweil that will mean that we will have access just with our thoughts to the vast knowledge base that we have with artificial intelligence. But the thing that Kurzweil and the others don't explore is the influence isn't just moving in one direction. You are subjecting yourself to potentially being hacked and manipulated by either artificial intelligence or people who are using it.
Yeah. And you have a lot of these guys, including Ray Kurzweil, including Yuval Noah Harari, with these delusions of godhood. I mean, I've got Ray Kurzweil in his documentary saying, like, we're working on building God. Like, does God exist? Well, not yet, but we're working on it. You've got Yuval Noah Harari saying we're going to upgrade ourselves. We're going to evolve into gods, this Homo Deus. And I mean, he actually said, and I've got him on camera saying that we're going to be superior to the God of the Bible because he was only creating organic life. We're going to be able to create synthetic biology. I mean, this stuff is madness. It reminds me of Genesis chapter 3, like you're going to live forever. You're going to be as gods. I mean, just kookiness and very concerning. What's the best place for people to get the book, Chris?
Well, right now it's available through Canon Press directly. It'll be The hardcover edition will be available on Amazon and other digital bookstores, I think tomorrow, so August 4th. But you can get the Kindle version at Amazon right now. So it'll be available in all those places that people like to buy books tomorrow. But today it's only available at Canon Press in terms of the physical hard copy.
Excellent. Well, Chris, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for sounding the alarm about these issues. I hope we can talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Alex.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. All right, folks, that is all we have time for today on the Sentinel Report. But I do want to thank you for tuning in. And I want to encourage you, don't just get mad. Don't just, sit there with smoke coming out of your ears. Do something. Get involved. Write a letter to your congressman. Run for office. Support somebody who's running for office. Share this broadcast with your pastor. Whatever you need to do, do something. Because we need all hands on deck right now to protect our health, our liberty, our country, and our civilization. I'm Alex Newman. This is the Sentinel Report. You can find so much more at libertysentinel.org. You can catch us on AM, FM radio across the country, all the major podcasting services, even YouTube. Somehow they brought us back, and Rumble, and all of those great things. So libertysentinel.org, you can get our free newsletter. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you so much, and God bless you all.